Noun. A noun is the name of a person, place, thing, idea, or feeling. For example, boy, Delhi, table, honesty, happiness. Types of noun. First, proper noun. Describes specific names. For example, Ravi, India, Monday. Common noun. Describes general names. For example, city, girl, month. Collective noun. Describes group. For example, team, crowd, bunch. Material noun. Describes substances. For example, gold, wood, milk. Abstract noun. Describes feelings. For example, love, truth, bravery. Pronoun. A pronoun replaces a noun. For example, he, she, it, they, someone, anyone. Types of pronouns. Personal pronoun. For example, I, you, he, she. Reflexive pronoun. For example, myself, herself. Demonstrative pronoun. For example, this, that. Indefinite pronoun. For example, someone, anyone. Interrogative pronoun. For example, who, what. Relative pronoun. For example, who, which, that. Distributive pronoun. For example, each, every. Reciprocal pronoun. For example, each other, one another. Adjective. It describes a noun or a pronoun. For example, tall, beautiful, fine, red. Types of adjectives. Adjective of quality. For example, kind, honest. Adjective of quantity. For example, some, much. Numeral adjective. For example, first, two. Demonstrative adjective. For example, this, those. Interrogative adjective. For example, which, what. Possessive adjective. For example, my, our. Distributive adjective. For example, each, every. Proper adjective. For example, Indian, American. Verb. A verb shows action, state, or possession. For example, run, eat, is, are, have. Types of verbs. Main verb. It shows action or state. For example, go, see. Helping verb. It helps the main verb. For example, is, am, are, do, has, have, can. Transitive verb. It needs an object. For example, she reads a book. Intransitive verb. No need of object. For example, he sleeps. Regular verb with ed. For example, worked, played. Irregular verbs without ed. For example, ate, went. Adverb. It describes a verb, adjective, or adverb. For example, quickly, very, always. Types of adverb. Adverb of manner means how. For example, slowly, quickly, bravely. Adverb of time means when. For example, yesterday, today, soon, now. Adverb of place means where. For example, here, there, above, outside. Adverb of frequency means how often. For example, always, usually, sometimes, never. Adverb of degree means how much. For example, very, to, quite, almost. Adverb of reason means why. For example, therefore, thus, hence. Interrogative adverbs means it asks questions. For example, when, where, why, how. Affirmation and negation means yes or no. For example, surely, certainly, not. Preposition, a word that shows relation between two words. For example, in, on, at, to, for, with, of, by. At is used with small places or time. For example, at home, at school, at 6 p.m. On, used with surfaces or days. For example, on the table, on Monday. In, used with large areas, months, or years. For example, in India, in March, in 2025. Conjunction. A conjunction is a word that joins words or sentences. For example, and, but, or, because. Types. Coordinating conjunction. It joins similar ideas. They are and, but, or, so. Subordinating conjunction. It joins main and dependent clause. These are because, although, if, when. Correlative conjunction. It is used in pairs. These are either or, neither nor, both and, etc. Interjection. A word or phrase used to express sudden feeling or emotions. For example, wow, oh, hey, ouch. Types. Joy. For example, hooray, wow. Sorrow. For example, alas, oh no. Surprise. For example, what? Oh. Approval. For example, bravo. Greeting. For example, hello, hi. Anger. For example, damn. Attention. For example, look, listen. Hesitation. For example, articles. Articles shows whether the noun is general or specific. Types. A. It is used before consonant sound. For example, a boy, a car, a university. N. It is used before vowel sound. For example, an apple, an hour, an honest man. The. The is used for specific things. For example, the sun, the president, the Taj Mahal. Voice. Voice shows whether the subject performs the action or receives it. Types. Active voice. Here subject does the action. For example, he writes a letter. Passive voice. Here subject receives the action. For example, a letter is written by him. Tenses. Tense is the form of a verb that shows the time of an action. Types. Present tense. Simple present. I play. Present continuous. I am playing. Present perfect, I have played. Present perfect continuous, I have been playing. Past tense, simple past, I played. Past continuous, I was playing. Past perfect, I had played. Past perfect continuous, I had been playing. Future tense, simple future, I will play. Future continuous, I will be playing. Future perfect, I will have played. Future perfect continuous, I will have been playing. Speech. A speech is a spoken expression of ideas to an audience. Types. Direct speech. It reports the exact words of a speaker. Here we use quotation marks. For example, she said, I am happy. Indirect speech. It reports the speaker's words in our own words. Here, no question marks needed. For example, she said that she was happy. Modals. Helping verbs used to express ability, advice, possibility, permission, obligation, etc. These are can. It shows ability. For example, I can swim. Could. It shows polite request. For example, could you help me? May. It asks for permission. For example, may I come in? Might. It shows weak possibility. For example, it might rain. Must. It shows necessity. For example, you must study. Shall. It shows suggestion. For example, shall we start? Should. It shows advice. For example, you should exercise. Will. It shows future. For example, I will call you. Clause. A group of words with a subject and verb. Types. Independent clause. It shows complete meaning. For example, she smiles. Dependent clause. It shows incomplete meaning. For example, because she is happy. Sentence. A sentence is a group of words that gives complete meaning. Types. Assertive sentence. It states a fact. For example, she is happy. Interrogative sentence. It asks a question. For example, are you coming? Imperative sentence. It commands or requests. For example, open the door. Exclamatory sentence. It shows strong feeling. For example, what a day. Optative sentence. It shows wish or prayer. For example, may you live long.